Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie Schneiderite. We got some good news. Naseim Brantley was ruled eligible immediately by the NCAA. He was a guy who transferred in immediately, as in he can practice for the spring. He was a guy who transferred in last offseason from Western Illinois and had some kind of NCAA issue. Never was totally described as to what that issue was. We have our best guess, but he was given that waiver, so he is going to be eligible for next year and should be a guy that makes a pretty big impact on the receiving group. Just tell us about kind of how this all came together of him actually getting that year of eligibility, because from everything we saw, I don't know how he should have gotten one.
Yeah, it's weird. So we've went over this a million times. 2018, class of 2018 recruit, played 5 games year one, played X amount of games year two. It was enough to pass the 5 threshold. I think he might have played 10 actually in year two.
He played 10 year two, 2020 didn't count, 11 year three, 10 in year 4, or technically year 5, but year 4 is given eligibility at Western Illinois.
So it makes no sense because he played over 4 games in 4 seasons, which means 4 years of eligibility. 2020 didn't count, so you could technically say he played 5 seasons where he went over the 4-game limit. And then he somehow entered the transfer portal, ended up at Rutgers, South Jersey, Jersey native, Central Jersey, Farmingdale, whatever you want to call it.
Squarely in Central Jersey, in Farmingdale, when you went to Howell High School.
Big debate.
You can't get much more Central Jersey than the middle part of Monmouth County, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's well, we'll let that one slide. But he came over from Western Illinois, played 3 years at Sacred Heart, teammate of J.D. DeRenzo while he was there, went to Western Illinois. I guess played better competition if you want to consider it that. But
significantly better competition at Western Illinois than Sacred Heart. Yeah.
Second team FCS All-American by Phil Steele. So I mean he's a pretty damn good receiver, and I think he's a certified starter next year. He was with the team all last season. He was still recovering a little bit because I think he broke his ankle or leg. I forget what it was specifically last year at Western Illinois in one of the last games of the season, or 2022.
2 years ago.
Yeah. So he had a whole year. He didn't participate in spring because he was still recovering. He was still out there. He still had his pads on, still had the yellow jersey, no contact. Didn't really do any of the drills and all that. But training camp, he was with the team. All season, he was with the team. And he was with the team for bowl practices, which is another 15. So you got a lot to work with here, a lot of weapons. It helps rebuild that wide receiver room. But I think the biggest issue here is you got to question what the hell the NCAA is doing. Because this guy could have been used this year significantly. Chris Long went down after game 1 in Northwestern. And I think this guy was in kind of getting ready to start over Chris Long before the season started. But the NCAA is just the biggest mess of messes right now between Jeremiah Williams. Like, just what was the issue? All you have to do is just kind of look through this thing and just be like, checks out. Okay, he's good. Done. That's it. It's as simple as that. Instead, you wait the whole year. You let this kid sit for an entire season, hurting his NFL draft stock. There's got to be some kind of legal suit that could technically be filed or something like that, because you just hurt this kid's NFL dreams, because now you're adding a year of age. You're hurting his draft stock. He misses an entire season when he was preseason Shrine Bowl 1,000, which is like the top 1,000 prospects in college football. So, I mean, it's just insane that the NCAA is just this in disarray. And we're seeing it right now with Jeremiah Williams, too. It's a giant shit show.
Yeah, you got to hope that they're going school by school and settling all the grievances one at a time. So if that's the logic, then maybe we'll see Jeremiah Williams, but I don't think that's how they operate. Suddenly this wide receiver group is looking pretty dangerous. You got seniors with Dymere Miller, Naseim Brantley, and Christian Dremel. You got Chris Long coming back as a junior. You got Ian Strong and Jesse O'Fury, both put up pretty good freshman seasons. You got Fama Toure, who redshirted last year, but he was making some noise all season. KJ Duff is the highest rated recruit of the group. He'll be coming in as a true freshman. Dylan Braithwaite had some rumblings in the spring and summer. He's got legit speed. He redshirted. Benjamin Black's a true freshman who's going to come in with a lot of speed. Isaiah Crumpler is another guy that the staff is high on. This is one of the more talented receiver groups we've seen in a while here. And it's nice that it's led by a senior group, even if 2 of the 3 seniors are guys who transferred in from the FCS level. I do kind of want to talk a little bit more about Naseim Brantley specifically. Like his best season by far was the season he had at Western Illinois, where he had 52 catches for 888 yards and 9 touchdowns. I've seen some conflicting numbers regarding his actual stat line. So it's between 52 and 53 catches and between like 880 and 900 receiving yards. It doesn't really matter. It's negligible.
Is that amazing in today's day and age? How you mix that up completely?
Yeah, it's weird. But like you said, he was second team All-American for his one season at Western Illinois, first team All-Conference. He was the newcomer of the year in the conference. He graded out at a 72.0, which put him in the top 250 of qualifying receivers. In 2022, though, his team had like a really tough schedule. If you look at who they played played 4 preseason teams in the FCS top 10, and they also played a Power 5 team in Minnesota. And I just want to run through the stat lines he had against each opponent because he had some of his best games of the season against the toughest competition. So against Minnesota, he had 3 catches for 50 yards and a touchdown. Richie just tweeted out that video of that catch. It was a pretty nice leaping catch in double coverage late in the game. He had 4 catches for 107 yards against South Dakota State, who were the eventual national champions of the FCS. He had 4 catches for 71 yards and a touchdown against Southern Illinois. Here's that catch that we just referred to. This was like a 35-yard touchdown. Leaping catch over a corner, and the safety help came in a little bit late. But, I mean, that'll play in the Big Ten for sure because he high-pointed that ball well. He's got size. He's listed at it was funny because he's listed at 6'4", 200 with Western Illinois, but Rutgers has him at 6'2", 210. So regardless, he's a big-bodied receiver. He's a thick guy. You could tell he's been in a college weight room for 4, 5, 6 years at this point. So he's going to come in physically ready. Against Missouri State, he had one of his best games of the season, another preseason top 10 team in the FCS, 6 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown. And then against the FCS runner-up from 2020, North Dakota State, he had 8 catches for 68 yards. So he's putting up big games against all his toughest opponents. Not that, one of those teams is a Big Ten team, but, I mean, you want to see guys at least go against the best of the best at their level. Same way that the NFL prefers guys from the SEC and the Big Ten because they want to see what they're doing against the best of the best against their peers to evaluate guys as prospects. I think the same way for the portal. If you're coming from the lower level, you better be playing the best teams if you really want to get some solid looks, and that's kind of what he got. Another anecdote I thought was interesting is he started at Sacred Heart playing a lot in the slot. So he's his first full season there. He played almost 97% of his snaps in the slot. His second season at Sacred Heart, he played 65% and then 47%. And then when he transferred to Western Illinois, he played almost 96% of his snaps out wide. So it seems like that's kind of his best alignment is a boundary receiver. So I'd imagine Rutgers is going to line him up there as well, given that we have Christian Dremel playing the slot, and he had his best year of his career last season in the slot. So I imagine it's going to be Brantley and Demir Miller out wide this season, unless some injuries happen. But that's my best guess as of right now.
Yeah, you kind of be crazy. It seems like to even play him in slot number 1 because, like you said, Dremel's there. Dremel's great, and number 2, he just doesn't do well in the slot. He does so much better on the outside. Some of those games are interesting too because he went up against North Dakota State in 2022 had 8 for 68. That's against David Braun. David Braun, intern / now full-time head coach of Northwestern, who had 8 wins with Northwestern. He runs a pretty damn good defense, I would say. He also went up against South Dakota State, who you said national champ, and Minnesota. Minnesota's a pretty good team too. So I mean, 2022 Minnesota, not 2023. Let's rewind that one a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting to look and just see that he's done it against some decent competition. I think this is going to be. I think he's a certified starter. And you said he was 72.0 offensive grade for PFF.
Yep.
You know where that slots him? Number 2 wide receiver on the team this year.
Yeah. Yep.
So I mean, that's only slotting him ahead of the only guy ahead of him was Jaquay Jackson, who had a 73.3. The next highest was Ian Strong at 67.3. So even if he's like in the high 60s range, he's probably still your second best receiver this year. So That's why it sucks that they couldn't have him on the field this season.
Yeah, if you look at the production he had just year by year, he had almost 30. He led, obviously, Western Illinois in receiving in 22. He had almost 39% of the team's receiving yards that year as well, which is just an absolutely huge number. If you take a look at what he did at Sacred Heart, he was the leading receiver in 2021, where he was first team. He was named first team all conference in the NEC. In 2022, I believe he also led the team in receiving. Yes, he led the team in receiving 2022 as well. So you're talking about a guy who each of his last 3 seasons at his different programs, he led his respective team in receiving. So not that he's going to 100% guaranteed lead Rutgers in receiving, but I mean, Sacred Heart, they were a 3-time NEC champ when he was there. He was 3 times named first team all conference as well, or 2-time first team all conference. So I mean, this is a guy who's won at that level. Western Illinois, they went 0-11 his only year there, but we'll just not look at that team stat. But I mean, he was dominant for that team when he was playing. He did suffer an injury in the second to last game, I guess, of the Western Illinois season, and that's kind of why he wasn't able to practice last year. He's coming off a foot injury. So for all we know, it might be a blessing in disguise because he wasn't able to practice in the spring, like I said, because of that injury. You got to assume he's at 110% now, and he's just ready to kind of go attack the Big Ten. And, he knows the system now. So it might be a blessing in disguise for him to have sat that year.
Yeah, it should be noted, too, that I know Sacred Heart, his numbers weren't great. They was still the leading receiver on the team, but just looking back at 2021 Sacred Heart team, they averaged 211 rushing yards per game. They averaged 150 passing yards per game.
Yep.
They're essentially Rutgers offense this past season. So, so they ran the ball a ton. They weren't really big passing guys, which makes sense based on if you look at the team. And I mean, when you got a guy like JD Dorenzo up front, kind of hard not to run the ball. But yeah. So just a little note there, anecdote.
Yeah. So this is a big deal to get him back. At the very least, it'll be a quality depth piece for this receiving room. I see it as like, we're not overly reliant on any individual guy to just like break through this season. We have, we have a lot of bets laid down on this roulette wheel right now, and not all of them are going to hit, but we are way more likely to have some hits this year in terms of the receiving room than we have in the years past. And you got to assume between Gavin Wimsatt either potentially taking a jump this offseason or Ethan Kaliak-Manis coming in and winning the job, that quarterback play will be improved in 2024 as well. So this combination of, getting basically everybody back on defense, getting basically everybody back and more on offense, and most likely a jump in quarterback play. This team's going to be dangerous next year. I'm getting more and more excited for the 2024 football season.
So I think we did this at the beginning of the offseason. Quarterback, check, sort of. We'll say it's a check. You got some competition. That's great. Wide receiver room, double check because Brantley's back now. We said going into spring, maybe you go into spring, see what you got, and then go add another portal guy. I think you're done with wide receiver now.
You're done, probably.
Tight end, you still need one at the very least. Offensive line, you probably still need one. So those are the top 2 right now. Defensive tackle, you went out and added Malcolm Ray, who looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty solid guy, played some significant snaps for Florida State, who, mind you, probably you can argue should have been a playoff team, to each their own on that one, but a good player who I think, honestly, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say he might be more productive than Isaiah Ayton was with Rutgers last season. So something to watch out for. Entire defense returns. And that's kind of it. You just need a tight end and a lineman at this point. And Reggie Sutton came back, who we forgot about, or I forgot about at least. So you really need one lineman and a tight end, and you're probably done for the year, or for the offseason at least.
Yeah, and who knows if anybody from Kent State or from Bowling Green hops in the portal, maybe we get involved with those guys too. Not saying that will or won't happen, but
hear me out.
We shall see. So outside of the Brantley news, you did put in a FutureCast for a high school recruit. You want to talk about this player a little bit?
Yeah, so this is the first FutureCast I've put in damn, I don't even know. It's been a minute, I guess. I think the last one I put in was Dylan Harper, honestly, which is crazy. It's been that long. Sometimes we get news beforehand, sometimes we don't. In this case, this is just a kid I've been able to talk to a lot over the past couple of days, and that's Renick Durillis out of Union High School, nicknamed Stretch. He's just a tall, lengthy cornerback prospect. If you looked at our profiles this morning, you would probably see his weight and be like, what the fuck, he's 150? Fixed it, don't worry, it's okay. He was 150 his sophomore year, though. Man packed on a little bit of weight. 5'11", 170 athlete, 5.73 star, number 8 in the country, or number 8 in the state, number 22 overall athlete in the country. I think this kid's a 4-star when it's all said and done. He's the next great Union High School defensive back, or you could even say prospect, because they've produced defensive linemen, they produced defensive backs, they produced, I guess you could argue wide receiver, because both the Naseim brothers kind of played receiver in high school too. But yeah, no, this kid's really good. He's taken a couple visits now. This spring, he's went to Rutgers twice already, January 17th and 28th, most recently this last Sunday. Went to West Virginia on the 20th, and now is going to Tennessee this upcoming weekend. He is a kid that has a top 5 that's probably going to come out relatively soon. I think the biggest competition here was originally going to be, I actually personally thought it was originally going to go down to Rutgers or Penn State, because he's visited both schools 5+ times. Sounds like it's actually going to come down to Rutgers or Tennessee, because the SEC allure does have some allure on guys up north. He did tell me he was really hyped about his Tennessee visit back in the fall, loved Knoxville, thought it was crazy, the atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. And it is, don't get me wrong, Tennessee has a pretty cool atmosphere. It's a big SEC school. Maybe not, it's not the Bamas and the Georgias of the world, but it's up there. But he's been to campus, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in 2023. He's been to campus twice already, and we're not even 1 month into 2024. From everything I've been told, it would be shocking if this kid doesn't end up staying home. Almost every Union High School kid has stayed home and went to Rutgers, minus one, and that would be Davison Igmanosin, who ended up actually committing to Rutgers, but then decommitted, went to Ole Miss, blah, blah, blah. Went to go talk with Marquise Watson and Chris Partridge at the time, and then transferred to Ohio State, where he's cornerback 1 for them. So, I mean, quite the jump for him, but he's a great player, and it would have been nice to have Rutgers have him too, but Stretch Durillis is a pretty good one in his own right. So I think this not going to happen right now. Maybe not even going to happen next month, but he wants to make a decision before summer, and I think it's only a matter of time before he's tweeting out a graphic that has TKR in the right corner and Rutgers on the bottom.
Interesting. All right. So this is a pretty highly rated recruit. It has a lot of good offers. So this would be one hell of a way to bolster the 2025 recruiting class. Really excited about this kid. Anything else you wanted to hit on before we head out here?
No, not really anything. He's built quite a relationship with with 2 coaches in particular, and I found this one a little interesting. He built a relationship with Mark Orphy. I mean, obviously, DB prospect, athlete, whatever you want to call him. Makes sense. But he's built a really good relationship with Austin Triglia. He's a graduate assistant. It's his first year as a grad assistant. Previously served as a player development type guy for Rutgers in the past 2 years. Bentley University alum. Bentley University, I forget, someone on the team, or one of the coaches graduated from there. I forget who it was, but definitely interesting, because he's starting to make a little bit of a name for himself. This is probably the 3rd or 4th time I've heard Triglia's name mentioned with recruiting, and I know sometimes they just assign the younger guys, the lower level guys, to host these recruits, but recruits like him a lot. So this might be a guy you might have to keep an eye on for moving up. Maybe not assistant coach just yet, but potentially down the line. I mean, he's only a grad assistant in year 1. Probably get a second grad year, and then who knows, analyst, whatever those other roles are, advisors, director of player personnel. But definitely a name to keep an eye on for Rutgers football down in the future.
Yeah, definitely a guy to keep tabs on for a future staff position. But thanks again for listening here, guys. We tried to get this out as soon as possible for you guys to get some more information on Naseim Brantley. I know we had a podcast discussing a lot of this information, but I figured it was best to kind of rehash it since, we haven't really heard from him in about a year. So
talk to NCAA.
Yeah. So thanks again, NCAA. Enjoy your demise, because things are not going so well for you guys right now.
Only a matter of time.
Only a matter of time. All right. Well, thanks again for listening. For me and Richie, this has been another edition of the Night Report podcast. Signing off.